Hello, everyone. Excited to get our first Mixtape Collective live stream going. So, unfortunately, both of our live performances today, Prenny Bixens and Lajo, have rescheduled until next month, at least Lajo for next month. Not sure on Prenny Bixens, but we do have some interviews today and tonight with Afro SPK, a Seattle-based graffiti artist. He also went to Evergreen. You'll hear a little bit about that in the interviews. And he has different murals all around Olympia that you might be familiar with. So stick with us while we get through these interviews. It was really awesome. I went out to Seattle a couple weeks ago and met with this artist on his boat. And we did just several interviews, and it was great to see him. We both went to college together. We met each other in Olympia, so I'm excited to share these interviews. They will also be available after the show on our Instagram. You'll see it on our IGTV. And then I also wanted to point out that there's some artwork happening in the background that he's doing, and he actually contributed a piece of this piece of artwork for this performance, for this live show, and also in support of Mixtape Collective and what we are doing here today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our first interview. So feel free to drop some comments, and I hope you enjoy.
What I've been hearing all my life is like, oh, the 20s, it gotta be fun, but it gotta be tough, right? So I think a vessel space like this has made my mid 20s to late 20s really comfortable. So not have to worry about like where I'm gonna live and da 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 da. I have this affordable thing, has created such a stress relief for me to be able to focus on what I want to do and how I can help. I remember a time where like I'm down on the couch painting, what that feels like, and being like, oh, I'm gonna sell this painting for thousands of dollars. No one being like, sure, guy on the couch, you know what I'm saying? Not understanding I'm still in school, and then selling that painting, and so I've made over hundreds of paintings in this boat. You use what you use. I know from being from DC, you know what I'm saying, like Southside hood shit, like complain about it all day, but when you realize, all right, this is what I got, this is what I gotta use, you still create your best work, you know what I'm saying? So being in a situation where you really got nothing, but you just do what you can. One of the biggest things that artists deal with is space, like housing. Once an artist has housing, they can focus. And so I've always felt that the artist should not be responsible for paying for these materials and this stuff because they need to express themselves. And so connecting with you down in the South End, I'll be able to see what up and coming artists are trying to achieve the same goals that we're trying to achieve with our art. And I know how it felt in the beginning stages of my career of being an artist and having a very limited amount of supplies, but still using those supplies and making sure that I like produce the best work. There's a lot of other organizations too in Olympia that are trying to do the same things, but I know that what you're doing is going to bring some new attention to Olympia and in all of the places in between, because you're going to be focused on trying to get those artists that are in between. And so like I'd love to, for me, I look at it as an opportunity to not only like be a part of, but help you reach out to those artists, because the more artists I find, the more materials I can get in their hands as well. Thus, why Vault and our mission and how we focus on mental health and art and being able to supply these materials for free for the BIPOC communities. So it's in alignment with what I do. So of course, hearing this, I had to jump on the project. Creating these safe spaces for brown and Black people who do not take away or create something that white people can't participate. It's like, are we still going to give art supplies to and white artists if they reach out? Of course. But are we focused on that right now? Right now, no, because we're trying to make sure that the the unrepresented communities get the supply. Some non-brown and black people shouldn't be worried about BIPOC spaces. They should be happy that these types of spaces are being created. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to show support, space is needed. Resources are needed. You know, food, resources, heat, stuff like that. You know, like to be able to supply these things, they're important. And it's just, again, it's not taking any space away from white people by creating space for brown and black people. And that just needs to be understood, you know.
And that was the first segment. So I originally cut these up because we were planning on having some live performers for this show. But like I said earlier at the beginning of the live stream, there were some personal matters that came up with both of those performers. But they are still interested in playing in the future. So you will be probably seeing some music in the future. But today, that was an interview with Afro SBK, a Seattle-based artist, graffiti artist, does all sorts of different arts and is involved in all sorts of different collectives and projects. He's involved in Art Volt Seattle. So you can go on our Instagram. You can follow him, follow Art Volt. That is at the King Fro Show and at Art Volt. Again, check it out on at Create Your Mixtape Collective on Instagram. So that was our first one, just sort of talking about, what are we doing in this space and why it's important. So that was sort of the conversation we were having there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next interview segment that we had. And this interview segment is about the Ganesh mural on the Indian cuisine restaurant downtown Olympia. I'm sure you've seen it if you've been down in Olympia. If you haven't, you'll be able to see it in this interview, but also get down there and check it out. So with that, here is the next segment.
Another example of like me feeling a little unappreciated as a black artist in a white space. So I remember doing a mural for Salon Refu. Susan Christian was in charge of the gallery. I had tagged her location at the time and ended up, again, being able to create a mural from tagging the location, turning into an opportunity to actually paint something. And so we connected and we created a mural. And at the time, I was like beefing with some cats and they had bombed over my mural. And so, we were like, fuck, what the fuck, And we were mad as shit because, it's our first mural. And then Kristen didn't give us an opportunity to restore our mural because she thought that we were bringing, beef and all this stuff to her gallery. And so she didn't, and we spent a lot of money, what I'm saying? Like this was like our first thing we wanted to do. It was me and Fane, we were just starting the crew. And so after getting bombed out, not having this person support me, I looked at Olympia and I said, man, fuck this. I can paint. I can do whatever I want. Like, I'm just as good as anybody else that's here. And at the time, I was really influenced by Hinduism and Vishnu and Shiva and Ganesh. And I was learning all the stories behind this, the culture and everything, Indian culture. And it was very influential to my work in the beginning. And so I was really interested in Ganesh. And so I had a friend who worked at the Taste of India. And I said, hey, Yo, because his name was Yo for shorter terms. And so he's like, what's good? And I was like, hey, man, I want to paint this wall because fuck this, fuck these people. I'm going to paint something. And I'm going to show these cats that I can fucking do whatever I want. And so my man said, got you. And he went as the cook, went to the owner and said, hey, yo, Jimmy, my man wants to do some shit. I met Jimmy, and Jimmy was like one of the first people to really give me that opportunity to do it. He walked up to me and we met, and he's like, okay. And that was it. And it's so different on the West Coast versus the East Coast. East Coast would have been like, oh, what do you do? Let me see some of your work. Blah, 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 blah. No, it was crazy being on the West Coast and just having someone just be like, oh, he's got it. And then someone like, okay, do it. And so at the time, I wanted to stick to a more traditional looking style. I didn't want to stylize. I wanted to go back to the classic paintings of the depicted gods in Hinduism, and so I was studying like the one book I had was the gods and goddesses in a world of gods and goddesses is what it was called. That's what got me to even initially draw Ganesh on the wall, and so I linked up with Michael Beason, who's a great person who at that point showed me, like we talk about brushstrokes in the piece. Like this is the first piece where I learned how to fade colors, where I had someone show me like line work and like wrist work of how to like start the color and where to like feather it off to be able to like get the next color. So that's why the leaves look like that and the waterfall with, I was really starting to understand like motion with Can and like understanding negative space in this piece, like the lotus flowers and just doing all that kind of stuff. And Michael at the time, he had just lost another mural or something, and he just had a bunch of paint. I was broke as fuck. I was like, "Hey man, I got a wall. You got paint. Like, let's come up with something." Then we did this traditional Ganesh piece, and and with the golden throne and the jewels, and just I remember looking at like doing these jewels, and this was like some. But a lot of doing this is directing too, like especially when you're doing murals with homies. It's nice to just have like a person with a solid design and just allocate roles of what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? And so in this situation, like, we outlined together, so we knew what we were going to come and do initially. So we didn't really need to tell each other what to do, and it was like a teaching thing for me because I wasn't aware of how to like fade. So we're exchanging ideas before we come to a concept. And so we definitely decided to keep the Great Cuisine of India line work because it was done by a sign painter named Ira. Amazing. I think Ira, if I'm mistaken, is in KYT. If I'm mistaken, my bad. But Ira's a sign painter, wanted to give respect, so we definitely didn't want to like take that out because we knew the history behind that. Could appreciate it. And so the decision with the toe dipping in the water, like stuff like that, like you're discussing these ideas and then you're just like, oh yeah, and then the toe, and then we put the toe in the water. You know what I'm saying? Like we're just talking about it. And this was, like I said, this was a senior thesis project as well. It all tied back into like Evergreen. I was able to use it as a part of my curriculum and stuff like that, finding places to do murals. These were the first times I was directing and throwing shows and just getting my feet into understanding what that life looked like. Give credit to the traditional drawings, that I've researched and seen. So again, it's like I understand graffiti artists can have for murals done with the best energy and the best intentions. It's like, I definitely understand being an outsider of like Washington and the Northwest. I try to definitely take the time to learn the history and the writers and stuff, but this isn't where I'm from. And so I think, being able to include like a local painter like Michael Beason and like showing the community like, hey, I'm not here to just take space. I'm also here to like create opportunities and create art. And so I definitely think coming into new spaces that aren't yours, you should extend those offers to local painters and get really involved in the scene. I believe in that, And so I think through time, people have seen that and they respect that and they don't go over it because first off, it's in a way, it's a religious mural. For me at the time, like the reasons behind painting it was obviously the location, but my own connection with Ganesh and learning about what he represented.
There you have it. That was our second section there with, that's again, Afro SPAK, Some Punk Kids in Seattle. And he is talking about a mural that he was a part of in downtown Olympia, Washington, and sort of how the history of how that came about. Really good stuff. The next thing we have coming up here is another another segment of an interview with him, and we're going to be talking about his involvement in Due's Donuts on the west side. That was a mural. There's a mural on the side of Due's Donuts on the west side, and he was part of that mural as well. And he also talks about sort of his style and how that style influences him today. And you can kind of see the connection between the artwork that he did on the side of Due's Donuts and the artwork that he was a part of in Seattle. So with that, we'll go ahead to the next segment here.
All right, so we got the Due's Donuts. Great mural in my career. It was about the third mural I had done in Olympia. I had just met my good friend Ray SPK, and we were just, it was in our beginnings of just, becoming fans. And it was also a time where I was trying to show my homies, like, we can do this professionally. Like, this can be work. Like, we don't have to keep, And so my peoples, they were like, well, how much do you need? And so when I look at this, I just remember like talking to my friends and really being like, okay, well, what do you need? And what's it going to cost for you to miss a day of work? Like, how much money do I need to make on this to be able to support you, bro? You know what I'm saying? And so when we were first doing Due's Donuts, like Gloria was the owner. She's probably still there, and she supported us. She's a great designer herself, and had this idea for her donut shop. And at the time, Henry's old dog had passed away, and so we put a little dog in as like a remembrance for his old dog, and so it's a tribute piece while also being a piece for this donut shop. And me and Hooray, we were getting to know each other, getting to really exchange style and encourage each other. And this is where his art really turned to focus more on character development and typography, where he wanted to like really mix both worlds. And we're able to push him when it comes to looking at himself and seeing more than just his letters, because I remember he had expressed to me he was getting bored, and I was like, well, there's characters. And so a lot of the gigs that I like to take, I'm not really told what to do, because this client is pretty familiar with my work, they're pretty familiar with my ability to direct a project. And so they were like, hey, we wanted to be colorful and creative. And so our crew is SPK, and on a big scale, Shopkins is really popular. And so we were just kind of like taking some Shopkin characters and kind of mushing a bunch of stuff together, and being up on the ladder and filling in certain blues. And these were certain prototypes for like characters to come in the future. Like the mouth of this donut is definitely a prototype for a character that I call Tasty Cloud now, that's on the Black Lives Matter mural, and so like doing those strokes kind of just remind me of where this idea has been. So I always used to say like, the image, the deity Krupa that I like paint now, has always been with me, and the shapes of this character have always been present. And everything that I draw, it's taken over time to study the form, to bring me a form, to bring this face. And so looking at the old line work really, it's like almost the study of like the structure of what I do now. The team of people who really put the team together, which is T-Dubs, Takia, and Joey Nix, you know what I'm saying? Definitely got to give credit to them. I know T-Dubs was asking me to be a part of the project, and I had some like initial resentment because, the political stance of everything, the space wasn't really filling. I know that the goal was to like, have Black support, but while having Black support, we have to create Black safety. And so I wasn't completely feeling too safe. You know what I'm saying? So I move with my crew. You know what I'm saying? Very grateful to be a part of a project like that, and considered to be a part of a project like that. And so, the initial we came down, and I busted out in like an hour and a half. They told me what time to be there. I rolled up. I had a simple design. I used my character Tasty Cloud, which I was starting to use in the city of Kent. They have an electrical box that has the Tasty Cloud motif all around it, and the whole thing was just like um, the colors were representations of different cultures and different people to be able to relate with the image that they're looking at, and it being a cloud because we're in Washington, and so I know in DC the rain is just downpour, so I've never really had a quote unquote relationship with the rain. It's just been something that I don't like. But when you come to Washington, there's like different types of rain. And so I think that through that, the people here have developed, and the people who move here develop a different relationship with the weather that is around them. You know what I'm saying? And so that was kind of what the motif was. So I thought to take that and put it into this situation where like we're trying to create a space for black. It's send a statement that Black Lives Matter. So like, in a way, like clouds were a representation of the black creativity and the different energies we all bring in our culture. So versus doing Grupa, which is a more personal archetype, I thought that the community would touch bases with Tasty Cloud more than that. So that's how I set that up. And this just goes back to what you were saying about like creating black and brown spaces and how that affects, how white people are bothered. Sometimes they feel excluded. It's like there's plenty of white spaces. And when white spaces are created, we're not included. Our spaces aren't for excluding anyone. We're just trying to create a safe space.
Again, that was Seattle graffiti artist Afro SPK, an interview that I did with him a couple weeks ago in preparation for this show. And again, we did have a couple of live bands scheduled for tonight, but unfortunately there were some private emergencies that happened. So Lajo will be playing at a later time, and Prenny Bixens may also be playing at a later time, but definitely Lajo. And we have some other artists that we're getting lined up for next month to do some live performances, as well as another Seattle-based artist. And this artist actually is also from DC, but we'll see in the coming weeks as the next show gets going. So anyway, I really enjoyed what he had to say about his involvement and his strokes in the Dude's Donut shop on the west side, and then how those strokes and the mouth in particular related to the letter that Afro helped draw in Seattle, the R of Black Lives Matter. So anyway, the next video, the final video that I have for you is one more mural that Afro SPK was involved in, Olympia, and I think this might be my favorite story of the 4 clips here. Really interesting, I think, how this mural downtown Olympia on Lloyd's Automotive came about. And so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. We're going to go ahead and you're going to hear it from Afro SPK himself. So we'll get going with that. Here we go. Enjoy.
For the record, I'm Afro SPK, some punk kids. You know what I'm saying? I'm from Washington, D.C., Southeast, Ward 8. I started my art career always. Like, I've always known that art was something that I wanted to do. As soon as I was willing to fight over it, I knew that this was something that I always wanted to do. I've never taken any 9-to-5 kind of job. I've always kind of been in the entrepreneurship of like making and selling art, or just a curator of community art shows. I've been consultants for people who are trying to get BIPOC spaces together. I've participated in being a after-school art teacher. So it's like different things that have always pushed me to focus around art. So for me, achieving those goals were also invested and rounded in my education. first started off at Maryland Eastern Shore. I did a year there. It was amazing just to get like the feel of what college was going to be, with how to really interact with community, especially having a Black community that was like, and being in a historically Black college, first off, like UMES is an HBCU, and amazing school, being able to immerse with Black people from all areas of the East Coast and even some from the West Coast. And so I did a year there, and I wasn't doing too well, and I had to make some like critical decisions. And so I decided to come to Washington to finish my education up at Evergreen. Through going to Evergreen, I also got into culture studies. I did Native studies for 2 years, and Chinese cultural studies for a year and a half. And I was able to broaden just my interest in photography to, being able to integrate those techniques in different communities. And Yvonne Peterson of the Chehalis tribe, she was able to really get this message of like, it's great to be able to be viewed in any community and help any community, And so I think her getting me to focus on more than just what I was focused on, and being able to take those resources and again get them to different communities was like a good influence. It's something that really carved out and molded my education towards the end of Evergreen. And so I eventually, got into some trouble, out graphing, hitting the streets, just killing. I came up on Olin and started SPK, started the crew, you know what I'm saying? I got into a lot of legal trouble. And so towards the end, I felt like a lot of animosity towards the policing system in Olympia, and learning how that whole thing goes and how the court system is and how you have to pay for that and all of that. It's just a pay to play trap, And so being able to go to college and have to manage and deal with those financial burdens, was another issue that brought a lot of animosity towards like Olympia. And then there was like, being an art major, we there's a lot of art kids. We don't like each other. So, but I started to feel like, in understanding, like at a certain point in time, I was a part of the Black culture for Olympia, with the 0.03 or 4% of Black people actually being Olympia from the times of 2012 to 14, 11 to 14. So all of a sudden going from a immersive community with everyone in Washington, D.C., and then being like the focal point of like in representation for a lot of white people what their Black culture is. I was really upset. I just got arrested. I was beefing with this SBK was beefing with DWS back in the day. And I saw this little lame ass motherfucker, Crevice. And I saw his tag, man, and just getting arrested and coming out of jail, man, like, fuck that shit. I'll just keep on doing what I'm gonna do. I ain't gonna change my name. I'm gonna keep my shit the way it is. And then seeing punk ass motherfuckers like that, you just feel like, man, I put in more work than you as fuck you. And so I was with my homie, and I ain't scared. I crossed motherfucker out, put the afro above. Super citizen. The motherfuckers who want to protect other people's property when they don't even have the credit score to own such property. Pulls up, hey, no, tries to call the cops. They come through, immediately see me, they're like, oh, where's the marker? Where's the da-da-da? They, because I was polite, they cited me versus arresting me. And so I waited an hour. I went back to the location that I had just, got cited for. And I went in and I said, hey, who's the owner of this joint? And like, wow, what you want them for? And I was like, I'll tag the shit just a minute ago. And they were like, oh, it's you. And they were like, well, why'd you do it? And I told the same fucking shit. Like, I don't like seeing punk ass motherfuckers like that. And that much energy was enough for me to do it. Because I'll put in more work in there. And so they got me in contact with the owner, told the owner the same thing. He said, well, what you want to do about it? Which in the situation created space for an opportunity. And so, I said to him, I was like, hey, I want to create a mural. Like, let me put some work on the wall. And so he then, went to court with me, testified and told the people, hey, you're wasting your time. Like, why y'all trying to prosecute this cat? I'm good with it. We're about to do a mural. He's already done the community service hours. you're wasting my time, you're wasting his time, you're wasting taxes, right? And so the judge Alf, whatever the fuck his first name is, decided upon himself to say, oh, well, you know, he's on bench probation, he broke probation, not even being cited. And so took it upon himself to try of just being on probation. I pay for that. So this mural, I guess, upset him because no one had came to court like, oh, I'm prepared. Like, oh, you gonna give me this many community service hours? Here's a piece of paper that said I just did all that shit. He wasn't ready for that. Because like they told me what the fuck they were gonna do. So I took it upon myself to just do it, right? And so I did the community service hours. I did the fucking mural. You know, I gave back and it don't matter. And so the prosecutor asked me, she said, you know, Afro, do you think that it's a simple solution when you destroy property to just put art on it? And I'll never forget, I took a dramatic pause in court. I said, yes, I think that's exactly what we should do. And yeah, someone in court laughed. And you know, it was a really funny moment because the whole system is a mockery. Does art heal the community? Well, yes, it does. Prosecutor. And of course, we have more art everywhere. Maybe, you know, people would look at graffiti as a demanding of space and art. Like, a lot of the people feel, you know, hey, if there's nothing there, I will put something there. And I think that right there should be looked at as someone in the community who can really, like, you know, put art in the community. So that's what that is for. So Lloyd's Automotive was that, bro. Like, putting that mural, doing that was, again, that's a fuck you to the state. The what's his name? Steve, I think the owner was. We were happy.
All right, and that was the final interview there with Afro. Again, really, just my favorite story, I think, out of those few interviews is definitely that one. Just such a treat to be able to learn about coming of these pieces of art in Olympia, and going out there and learning more about you know, what Afro does, what he's doing now in Seattle. So anyway, I posted his tag for Instagram if you want to follow him down there at the King Fro Show. See all sorts of stuff. He's always posting stuff, doing stories and showing different stuff that he's doing all around town, everywhere. So and other people's art. So just a really great, you know, great thing to see. So anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in today. And you know, next month we're gonna have some live music for you. But you should be able to see these video clips on our Instagram page, and keep in touch on the Instagram page. Follow us, and we will let you know about what is coming in the future. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in today and watching those interviews with me. It was a pleasure doing those interviews, and I look forward to helping and creating some more content for this group. So thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful Saturday night.